Now, as we look to the past to inform the future, let's return to the present. AFRL is doing some really amazing work with cognition and the brain to help better inform artificial intelligence systems. Another question for you regarding this. What if we had the means to turn training as we know it on its head? What if we could better inform airmen and guardians, not only retain skills, but learn them in a more timely manner? We have the answer to that. We have our next speaker, who's head of the iNeura LS program, which is working that very question. What if we could change training? What if that's all possible? But I'm getting ahead of myself. I will let the man himself explain it. As we welcome to the stage, we got there, Dr. Nate Bridges, and his talk, Moving Beyond Averages.
All right, show of hands. How many of you all own a cell phone? Right, pretty much everyone, no surprise. Okay, what about the Android users? That's your Google Pixel, your Samsung Galaxy, et cetera. Okay, I see some, okay, I hear some hissing, I see some people, okay. All right, well, okay, maybe we'll try something else. What about, the iPhone users out there? Okay, I see the rest of the group that uses the iOS operating system. So I could have done this for multiple categories. PC versus Mac, Nike versus Adidas, Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, Home Depot versus Lowe's, so on, and seen the same thing. And what that reveals is a simple truth. A lot of things in our society are designed for large groups of people. But here's the thing, we're all different, right? We have different needs, different preferences, and yet we're forced to choose. Instead, picture a future where we don't have to choose. Instead of an iOS or an Android OS, we'd have a UOS, a world when you need it, where you need it, how you need it.
Mr. Theodore Twombly, welcome to the world's first artificially intelligent operating system. We'd like to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
Are you social or antisocial?
I guess I haven't been social in a while.
How would you describe your relationship with your mother? Thank you. Please wait as your operating system is initiated.
Hello, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Samantha.
So what you just saw was from the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. And as you saw, all he had to do, Joaquin that is, was answer a few questions, and an operating system quickly created an operating system to fit him, just like that. We thought about this 10 years ago, creating technology that instantly molds itself to us. Hi, I'm Dr. Nate Bridges. I'm a research biomedical engineer and program lead here at the AFRL, and I've been working the past several years on this very thing, creating technologies and capabilities that instantly mold themselves to us. As program lead, I've directed the technical and scientific efforts of 56 scientists and engineers across 3 AFRL technology directorates and teams from coast to coast. And they have been working on creating a stronger symbiosis between technology and the brain. I've served on 3 DARPA programs and have worked within the AFRL Transformational Capabilities Program Office to push state-of-the-art human-computer interfaces. My research has spanned impact biomechanics, cognitive and behavioral neuroscience, neuroergonomics, and neuroengineering. But everything that I have done has focused on protecting, rehabilitating, and improving the human brain. Now you might ask, why have I done this? It's because it kills me. It kills me when I see others fail to reach their potential because the technology they are forced to use limits them. Similarly, it kills me when I see the user fail to reach their potential because, or I flip that, when you see technology fail to reach its potential because of the user. This is largely because we design around averages. However, if we want to push our limits as a society and reach our potential, we need to move beyond averages. So for today, let's break down the constraints of using an average. Let's explore the technologies we've been working on to push past these averages. And then finally, look at how this extends to society in the future that we see as possible. So let's take a step back. In the book, The End of Average, Todd Rose explains that from the 1920s to the 1950s, the Air Force designed around averages. And they did this by creating a cockpit with fixed dimensions based off of more than 4,000 pilots and 140 dimensions. Not only was the cockpit standardized, but so was the size and the shape of the seat, the distance from the pedal to the stick, the height of the windshield, even the shape of the flight helmet. However, a young lieutenant asked a very simple question. How many of our pilots actually fall within this average range? Pretty reasonable, right? Surprisingly, out of the 10 dimensions deemed most relevant for physical design, not one pilot out of the 4,063 pilots fit within those average ranges. Not one. There was no such thing as an average pilot. We had been designing a cockpit for the average pilot and actually designed it for no one. And that's the point I want to hammer today. There's no such thing as average when it comes to people. We are different. Average is a mathematical construct, not reality. Unfortunately, designers still design around averages, and that's because you can't make a single device for every single person. Instead, designers are forced to shape or mold their technology to a few different averages by creating a few different versions, if they do this at all. But again, you can't make something that fits everyone's needs, and our needs, they change over time. That was problem number one, right? So if you fast forward to the future in my Air Force story, we now have cockpits and equipment with adjustability built in. Think of your car seat. You can move it forward, you can move it backwards, you can move it up, you can move it down. That's so that the average seat can be adjusted to the individual. Great, right? Well, think a little bit more about that. You still have to adjust the seat, which is bringing us to problem number two. We have to tell technology what our needs are. So going back to the phone, most phones have adjustability or settings built in so that you can make changes to meet the individual's needs. But the thing is, we don't always know what we need. And even if we know what we need, we have to stop what we're doing to make changes. And then, our ability to make the changes, it was limited by the initial design. Guess what that was? Problem number one. So our ability for technology to reach its greatest potential was doomed from the start. In short, we may make great technologies, but it's often limited by the user. Now, others have been working in this area. For example, let's think. There's the education system with Montessori and Khan Academy. We have treadmill belts that can adjust speed based off of the heart rate. We even have cars that can track your eye patterns and use artificial intelligence to determine how drowsy you are, and then take corrective action. However, a lot of technology forgets one of the most important elements that makes us who we are as human beings, the brain. And given that, we at the AFRL have been working on how to better integrate the brain into technology through a program called the Individualized Neural Learning System, or iNeuroLS. The vision has been to empower technology so that technology can adapt to individuals' needs given what the brain tells us. A helpful way to think about this is sense, assess, and augment. So you want to sense valuable information about the human, assess meaning from that, and then do something useful through augmentation. So on the sense side, we've been using what are called brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, or brain-machine interfaces, or BMIs. These technologies non-invasively and safely read brain signals. You can read the electrical components of brain signals through what's called electroencephalography, or EEG. So think of what you might wear at the doctor's office. You can see an example there at the top. Or you can read the magnetic components of brain signals through what's called magnetoencephalography, or MEG. We've been working to integrate these into virtual and augmented reality. So think of your Oculus Rift, your HoloLens, having access to your brain and what that could do. Similarly, you can read a person's eye patterns through eye tracking with eye tracking glasses as an example, and you can see a colleague of mine wearing those at the bottom there. So that was sense. Then you have to assess the meaning of what you're sensing. So think of your brain having its own personal translator. It's one thing to hear what a person is saying, it's another to understand the meaning of what they're saying, which is what I mean by assess. In our case, we use advanced machine learning or artificial intelligence algorithms that interpret meaning from brain signals. We can figure out your different cognitive state, like your level of attention or arousal. We can even figure out which parts of your brain are engaged during a cognitive task. So an example you see behind me is changes in brain pattern activity as a person is thinking about moving their hands. So that's the assess side. Then we move to the augment side. We've been exploring two different types of technology, neuromodulation and virtual/augmented reality. Neuromodulation uses safe forms of energy to jazz up the human brain to improve cognitive performance. Researchers at our lab have used both light, electricity, magnetic, even acoustic energy to target selective brain regions to improve cognitive performance. And you can see there's a picture of me wearing some of the technology, and there's some of the work that we've been doing in that neuromodulation space. However, most neuromodulation is provided at the same time, in the same way, for everyone. We envision a future where instead you can provide neuromodulation given what that individual's brain tells us and not treat them as an average. Similarly, when it comes to virtual or augmented reality, instead of providing content in the same way, at the same time for everyone, we can adapt that content given what that person's brain tells us. In the future, we're hoping for something like this.
Hey, Mikey, I think he likes it. How about some more? Hell yes. Hell yeah. How was he? 10 hours straight. He's a machine. I know Kung Fu.
I know Kung Fu. I love that scene. And hopefully you guys will see that we're a lot closer to something like this than you might not have realized before. In fact, think about it now, what the future would look like for us if it was like in The Matrix or Her, like you saw before, even if it was just pieces of it. It would be a future where the individual and technology could perform at their greatest potential. A future where the things that surround us would finally meet our needs. We'd be able to rapidly acquire skills and knowledge when it's needed, which would reduce training costs. We'd have an agile human being that could adapt to needs in an ever-changing world. Additionally, one person could do multiple things. We'd finally have a technology that actually meets our needs instead of having to settle for one built for an average. This is going to promote inclusivity for those who don't fall within the average. And that's going to lead to stronger teams. We could devote 100% of our time on the things that matter instead of spending some of our time on adjusting the technology to fit us. To get there, we as a community, and I'm talking to you all out here and online, we need to start working on improving how we sense, assess, and augment the human. To summarize, we limit ourselves by designing to averages. We've taken steps to improve and address those limitations, but we still have a long way to go. We need to start incorporating more individuality into our work, and we're taking steps towards that by improving how we sense, assess, and augment the human. So let's stop designing for the average and instead design for the individual. For those of you out here that work either in the sense, assess, or augment side of things, think about how you can start incorporating individuality into your work today, now, instead of constraining yourself to an average. And those of you over here that are, consumers of the technology, which is really all of us, start demanding customization instead of accepting the average status quo that's presented to you. I asked, let's change the culture and the future together. Thank you.
Nate, that was awesome. See, the work that his team is doing really goes to show how we can make more inclusive forms of training, really break down barriers, and like he said, break the average. And it may even have someone like me say it someday, I know Kung Fu. Wachowski's call me. Now, that said, as we move ahead here, we are getting closer and closer to our midway point. But something important to note before we get there. Some of you may not know this, but this kind of research that Nate's doing, you think would turn some heads, right? And it did. Last night, he received the AFRL Early Career Award as one of the attendees there, so big round of applause for him. So well-deserved, incredible research. But like I mentioned, we are officially at our intermission. So we ask all of you to return here at 1:55 for about a 15-minute intermission, and we'll start the second half of the show then. So go forth, conquer, and do what you must. We'll meet back soon.